As we reported earlier, President Trump on Friday suggested getting rid of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, better known as FEMA, and letting individual states coordinate disaster responses. Established in 1979 under the Carter administration, FEMA's stated mission is to help people before, during, and after disasters. FEMA officially became part of the Department of Homeland Security in 2003. It's comprised of about 17,000 full-time employees and has a budget of more than $33 billion. Thomas Sivak joins us now. He's a former FEMA regional administrator. Thank you so much for being here, Tom. We really appreciate it. Can you help us understand the role of FEMA after a major disaster?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Lindsay. A couple of things. First, what's the role of FEMA? They're there to be a supporting agency. When a disaster happens, one of the things we have to remember is that all disasters start local and then local. What does that mean? There are hundreds of disasters that happen that we don't know of every single day. We see the big ones, but the small ones are the ones that are very challenging for both local communities and then also states as well. So when a state exceeds the capacity to be able to respond to an event, that's where FEMA comes in. Now, there's a lot of intricacies that come along with this. First, we have to understand the size, complexity, and scope of the incident. When a disaster takes place, most communities can respond to them. But have they budgeted for them? Have they made sure that they're expecting a tornadic outbreak to take place in their community, or wildfires? We're seeing these catastrophic events taking place out west, or the events that took place down in Western North Carolina as a prime example. So we see the catastrophics, but there's smaller disasters that happen every single day. When FEMA comes in, we come in with a couple of things. Number one, individual assistance. That's the most important thing that we can think of right now. The impacted communities are the survivors. When individual assistance, if it's risen to that level, it's being able to receive funds to be able to get communities and basically survivors back on the road to recovery.
So does individual assistance mean if I'm a business owner or a homeowner, FEMA's writing me a check?
Okay, so let's dive into that. When you look at individual assistance, one of the things that took place last year, and it was very transformational, was immediate needs assistance. So that was being able to get, this is the $750 check. If their house was impacted, they were impacted by a disaster, they received that funding. However, depending on the size and complexity, if you have damages to your house, it all depends on what that level is. That's where you start getting into the intricate parts of what can be, what you can receive funding for overall. So it could be, it used to be you get funding for a shingle that might be blown off your house. The changes in the individual assistance actually allow for much more greater opportunities to be able to have someone live in a house that's safe, sanitary, and secure, which is a big piece of that puzzle, especially when you look at communities that are impacted. We want to get communities on the road to recovery as quickly as possible so they can get back onto whatever that norm is going to be.
So, Tom, would individual states be able to pick up FEMA's role if the agency were to be downsized or go away completely?
Yeah, Lindsay, it's a great question. You know, do states have the capacity? When we look about capacity and capability in terms of states, we have to be able to look at, do they have the staffing? Do they have the means to do it? You know, when we look at the situation right now, one of the things I'd say is taking a step back. Do states have the capacity? It depends on the size of the state. When you have hurricane-prone states or wildfire-prone states, do they have capacity? They have capacity and capability. But when it gets so large, do they have the abilities to be able to respond to and recover from it? When you think about the money that goes to the individuals, the communities, the survivors, being able to understand what happened, case management, is one thing. Then being able to pay out that funding is another component for it. And then identifying if there's any other means to be able to get more money is another aspect. So it starts to be layered on top of it.
Okay.
And that's for survivors. Communities on public assistance is a totally different world. Public assistance is being able to get that community back onto the road to recovery. Roads, bridges, public infrastructure. When you look at communities, some communities are self-insured. And so when that public infrastructure is impacted, then we have to take another step back and be able to see if it was insured or not, and then also be able to see if it falls within the policy of what's taking place. That's where FEMA looks at it overall.
Clearly a very complex endeavor to overhaul or get rid of completely, and clearly the answer being it depends on whether states can take up that role. Thomas Sivak, we have to leave it there for today, but certainly this conversation will continue. Thank you for your time, sir.
Great. Thank you, ma'am. Have a great night.
You too.